Chairman Kang had made, by his own precise accounting, exactly 3 mistakes of consequence in his 52 years. The first was a misjudgment of a rival's ambition in his 20s, a mistake that cost him a finger and taught him to never again underestimate greed. The second was trusting a politician 7 years later, a mistake that cost him a fortune and taught him that loyalty was a commodity to be purchased, never gifted. These errors were survivable. They were lessons etched in scar tissue and balance sheets. The third mistake was different. The third mistake was seeing the girl as an object of charity, a piece of his life to be managed. For 12 years he had seen the wheelchair and not the person in it. This mistake, he was beginning to understand, would not cost him a finger or a fortune. It would cost him everything. The station master, a man with a face worn smooth by decades of observing hurried arrivals and sorrowful departures, had delivered the wound in 9 precisely counted words. He had looked at Kang, not with the deference Kang's presence usually commanded, but with a kind of clinical pity. "Sir, it took 4 hours for anyone to notice. By the way, wherever in the world you're watching from right now, let me know in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach." Okay, where were we? The station master's words hung in the air of the small, sterile office, smelling of disinfectant and stale coffee. They were an indictment, not of the family who had supposedly left her, but of him. Chairman Kang, a man whose entire empire was built on the principle of attention, of noticing the smallest shift in the market, the slightest hesitation in a rival's voice, had failed to notice the person who lived under his own roof. For 4 hours she had sat on the gleaming concourse of Seoul Station, a fixed point in a river of transient humanity, and the world had flowed around her as if she were a stone. It was an unacceptable lapse, an error in the system, his system. He had arrived at the station not with concern, but with irritation. The call had come from Mr. Cho, his most senior and trusted lieutenant, a man whose voice was perpetually calibrated to a low hum of absolute control. "Chairman," Cho had said, the word clipped and clean, "a situation has arisen concerning Soo-jin." The name was followed by a fractional pause, just long enough to signal a delicate matter. Station authorities called. Her family's contact number, the one in her file, it routes to us. They say she has been left. Left? The word was absurd. Soo-jin did not have a family, not in any functional sense. Her parents were ghosts. A story of a car accident and a loyal subordinate. A debt Kang had assumed 12 years ago. He had provided. That was the verb he used in his own mind. He provided a home, the best medical care, tutors, a quiet room in his sprawling, minimalist estate on the slopes of Bugak Mountain. He had arranged her life with the same frictionless efficiency he applied to his port logistics and private equity ventures. It was a problem solved, a variable accounted for. For her to be left at a train station was a logistical failure, a loose thread in a perfectly woven tapestry. He had pictured a social worker, a bureaucratic tangle he would have to sever with a sharp phone call and a discreet payment. He drove himself, forgoing his usual driver. He preferred it that way when his thoughts were jagged. The rain-slicked streets of Seoul reflected the neon signs in long, bleeding smears of color. The city was a machine he knew how to operate, a network of levers and switches. Power, for Kam, was not about violence, not anymore. It was about control. It was about knowing how the system worked, who answered which phone, what pressure to apply to which joint to make the entire skeleton move. He was a master of the unseen architecture of the city. When he saw her, the irritation curdled into something colder, something less familiar. She was not crying. She was not distressed. She sat in her powered wheelchair near the glass wall overlooking the tracks, her hands resting in her lap. Her gaze was fixed on the rhythmic arrival and departure of the KTX trains, their sleek bodies sliding into the station like silver fish. She looked small against the vastness of the concourse, yet entirely self-contained. The station master had pointed her out from his office window. "She hasn't moved," he'd said. "Just watches the trains." Kang approached her, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the polished granite. He stopped a few feet away, observing her as he would a new piece of art or a potential acquisition. She was 24 now. He realized with a sudden, hollow shock that he wasn't entirely sure. Was she 24 or 25? The uncertainty was a small crack in the foundation of his self-concept. He knew the exact birth date of every member of the board of his top 3 holding companies. He knew the names of their children. He did not know Sujin's age. "Sujin," he said. His voice was level, betraying none of the disquiet blooming in his chest. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes, large and dark, met his. There was no fear in them, no relief. There was only a calm, unnerving clarity, as if she had been expecting him, as if he were arriving precisely on schedule. "Chairman Kang," she replied. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. It was not the voice of a victim. "There has been a misunderstanding," he began, the words automatic, the smooth patter of a man accustomed to smoothing things over. "Mr. Cho received a call. Let's go home." He used the word home without thinking, a placeholder for the silent, museum-like house they shared, but did not inhabit together. She did not respond immediately. She simply looked at him, and in that look, Kang felt a shift in the tectonic plates of his world. He was the one being assessed. He, who assessed everyone, was under scrutiny. "Home," she repeated, the word a question, not an affirmation. She then looked away, back toward the trains. "I don't think so." The statement was so quiet, so devoid of defiance, that it took him a moment to process it. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a statement of fact. He felt a surge of his old impatience, the reflex to command, to assert the reality he had constructed. "This is not the place for this discussion. My car is outside." "I am waiting," she said, her focus still on the tracks. "Waiting for whom? The people who left you here?" The question came out sharper than he intended. "No," she said. She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of something in her expression. It wasn't sadness, it was precision. "They did not leave me. They delivered me." The distinction was lost on him. It sounded like semantics, the kind of thing people without power clung to. "Delivered or left, the result is the same. You are here. You will come with me now." He reached forward, his hand moving toward the control panel on her wheelchair. It was an instinctual gesture of control, of taking charge. Her hand, surprisingly swift, covered the joystick. Her fingers were long and slender, but her grip was firm. "Please don't." Again, not a plea, a directive. He froze, his hand hovering in the air. For the first time in perhaps 20 years, someone had told him no without shouting, without leverage, without a threat. It was simply a boundary, clearly and quietly marked. He withdrew his hand as if the space around her chair were charged with an electric current. The world he inhabited was a world of loud declarations, of posturing and power plays, of men who took up space with their voices and their bodies. Her stillness was a foreign language. He felt unmoored, the familiar tools of his trade suddenly useless. He couldn't intimidate her. He couldn't buy her. He couldn't manage her. He could only stand there, a powerful man rendered impotent by a quiet girl in a wheelchair. "What is this, Sujin?" he asked, his voice lower now, stripped of its executive authority. "Is this about money? Do you need something?" It was his default diagnosis for all human behavior. She finally gave him her full attention. "Attention," she said, the single word landing in the space between them. "That is what I needed." And then, a second sentence that would become the key to the lock he hadn't known existed. "You see what you look for, Chairman, and you never looked." Before he could formulate a response, his phone buzzed. It was a vibration he recognized, a dedicated line. It was Lee Jin-woo, the head of Mirai Capital, his single largest investor, a man whose fund controlled a 17% stake in Kang's flagship logistics company. Lee did not call after hours. Ever. Kang held up a finger to Sujin, a gesture of ingrained habit, of prioritizing the urgent over the important. He stepped away, turning his back to her, creating a bubble of privacy. "Jinwoo," he said, his voice once again crisp and professional. "Kang." The voice on the other end was tight. "We have a problem. I'm pulling the Maipo doc deal." Kang's mind snapped into focus. The confusion over Sujin instantly compartmentalized. The Maipo deal was a $500 million acquisition of a deep-water port facility. It was the cornerstone of his 5-year expansion plan. It had been negotiated for 6 months. The contracts were ready for signing in the morning. "What are you talking about? The financing is secured. The board approved it yesterday." "The financing was secured based on a set of risk assessment projections," Lee said. "Projections I no longer trust." "They were your projections, Jinwoo. Your people ran the numbers with my people." "No," Lee corrected him. "My people ran the numbers with your person, singular." A pause. "We are withdrawing our capital effective at market open. I wanted to give you the courtesy of a direct call. The official notice will be filed in 1 hour." Kang felt a cold dread seep into his bones. "What person, Jinwoo? Who are you talking about?" "The analyst," Lee said, his voice holding a note of disbelief, as if Kang's ignorance were the most shocking part of the conversation. "The one who has been the sole point of contact for my due diligence team for the last year. The one who built the models. We don't do business with you, Kang. We do business with them, and since they are no longer with your organization, the deal is off." "Give me a name, Jinwoo," Kang demanded, his voice dangerously low. There was a rustle of papers on the other end. "There is no last name on the file. It's just a first name. The contact protocol was unusual, but the work was impeccable. The name is Sujin." The phone slipped from Kang's fingers, clattering onto the granite floor. He turned slowly, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. He looked at the girl in the wheelchair, who was now watching him with that same calm, unnerving gaze. She had not moved. She had not needed to. The first domino had fallen, and he finally understood. She had not been delivered here. She had not been left. She had withdrawn, and she had taken his empire with her. The call from Lee Jinwoo was only the beginning. It was the first tremor of an earthquake that would spend the next 2 hours systematically dismantling the edifice of Chairman Kang's life. He retrieved his phone from the floor, the screen spider-webbed with cracks, a fitting metaphor for his current reality. As he stood, another call came in. It was from Assemblyman Kim, a man whose political campaigns Kang had quietly and generously funded for a decade, a man who ensured his port operations were never snarled in regulatory red tape. "Chairman," Kim began, his voice strained, stripped of its usual obsequious warmth. I am calling to inform you that the special zoning variance for the Incheon expansion has been tabled indefinitely. Indefinitely? Kang's mind was racing, trying to connect this to the call from Lee. On what grounds? We had a deal, Kim. The grounds are a formal complaint filed with the Oversight Committee, the politician said, the words clearly read from a script. A very detailed complaint, citing potential environmental impacts and violations of coastal protection statutes. Frankly, Kang, the documentation is exhaustive. It's a work of art. It would take my staff a year to rebut it. Who filed it? Kang asked, though he already knew the answer. It was a question asked for confirmation, not information. There was a hesitant cough. It was filed anonymously, through a public interest law firm. But the technical advisor they cited, the source of the data, the committee is taking it very seriously. The file is attributed to an independent researcher. They only gave a first name. Kang didn't need to hear it. He hung up the phone without another word. Two pillars of his empire, finance and political influence, had crumbled in less than 10 minutes. He looked over at Soo-jin. She was still there, a silent sentinel by the glass wall. The station was emptying out, the late-night travelers hurrying toward the last trains. The vast space amplified the growing silence between them. He had built his world on a network of transactional relationships, a web of debts and favors. He had always believed he was the spider at the center. Now he saw that the web itself, the strong, invisible silk of trust and competence that held it all together, was not his at all. It was hers. And she was methodically severing every strand. He walked back over to her, the anger and confusion now replaced by a chilling, analytical calm. This was not a tantrum. This was a strategy. This was an attack, executed with a precision he would have admired in an enemy. The Mipo deal is dead, he said, stating the fact plainly. The Incheon variance is blocked. Soo-jin nodded, a small, economical movement. Yes, she said. The algorithms projected a 42% chance of default on the Mipo bond covenants within 3 years. The environmental impact statement for Incheon was understated by a factor of 3. They were bad deals, Chairman, built on flawed premises. He stared at her. You were my analyst? The question was absurd. His analyst was a team of 20 people in a glass tower in Gangnam, run by Mr. Cho. Mr. Cho's team collated data, she corrected him gently. I analyzed it. They saw the numbers. I saw the patterns. You see what you look for. The refrain again. This time it landed like a punch. He had looked for growth, for expansion, for victory. He had never looked at the underlying truth of the numbers. He had outsourced his attention. A third call came through. This one was from the portmaster at Busan, a gruff, old-school operator named Captain Choi, a man Kang had known for 30 years. Choi was not a man given to panic. Kang, he barked, no honorifics. Your shipment from Qingdao, the one with the Siemens turbines? It's been flagged by customs. They're holding it. For what? Kang snapped. The paperwork is perfect. The paperwork is perfect, Choi agreed. Too perfect. It was filed by a third-party logistics agent I've never heard of, and the insurance bond was underwritten by a firm that got downgraded this morning. It's a mess. But that's not your biggest problem. The dock workers union just called a wildcat strike, effective immediately, on your berths only. The union? I just signed a new contract with them last month. They love me. A dry, humorless laugh crackled down the line. They don't love you, Kang. They love the woman who ran your foundation, the one who made sure their kids got scholarships and their widows got a death benefit that wasn't insulting, the one who showed up herself in a damn wheelchair to the funeral of that crane operator who died last year. She's the one they trusted. And I just got a call from the union boss. He told me she called him this afternoon. Said she was taking a leave of absence. Said he should look very, very carefully at any work orders coming from your office from now on. He's loyal to her, Kang, not to your money. Kang ended the call. Capital, politics, operations. In the space of less than an hour, the 3 legs of the stool that supported his entire enterprise had been kicked out. He was in free fall, and the person who had triggered it all was sitting 10 feet away, watching a train pull out of the station, her face illuminated by the passing lights. He finally understood the station master's words. It took 4 hours for anyone to notice. For 4 hours, she had sat there, giving her network the time to receive her calls, to read her emails, to act on her instructions. It wasn't a period of abandonment. It was a grace period, a head start. For them, not for him. He felt a profound, hollow emptiness. He had thought of his foundation, his charitable works, as a cost of doing business, a public relations exercise managed by a junior assistant who reported to Mr. Cho. He had signed the checks. He had attended the galas. He had never once considered the human architecture of it, the relationships being built in his name, the loyalty being earned on his dime but credited to an account he didn't even know existed, an account held by Soo Jin. The foundation, he said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. People are not assets, Chairman, she said, her voice soft. Loyalty is not a line item on a budget. It is earned. It is earned with attention. He sank onto the cold bench opposite her. The bustling station was now nearly deserted. A cleaner pushed a wide broom across the floor, the rhythmic scraping the only sound. The great clock on the wall showed it was nearly midnight. For the first time in his adult life, Chairman Kang did not know what to do next. His playbook was useless. His power was an illusion. The entire game had been changed, and he hadn't even known he was playing. Why? He asked. It was the only question left. Why do this? She turned her chair to face him directly. The space between them felt like a courtroom. Because you were in danger, she said, and you couldn't see it. And the only way to make you see it was to take away everything you thought was protecting you. In danger? I am the danger, he said, a reflexive boast from a lifetime of dominance. No, Soo Jin said, and her voice was filled with a deep, weary sadness that cut him more than any anger could have. You are the target. With that, she maneuvered her wheelchair toward the elevators. My ride is here, she said. If you want to understand, go to my room. Look at my desk, the real one, not the one the maids clean. He watched her go, a small figure receding into the cavernous station. He did not try to stop her this time. He was no longer the chairman. He was a student in a class he hadn't known he was enrolled in, and the first lesson had just concluded. He was alone in the echoing silence, with nothing but a cracked phone and a set of instructions. Go to her room. Find her real desk. He had no idea what that meant. He had been in her room perhaps twice in 12 years. He had approved the decorator. He had paid the bill. He had never once truly looked inside. The drive back to his estate was an exercise in dissociation. The familiar streets seemed alien, the city lights cold and menacing. He passed his own office tower, a monument of black glass and steel, and felt nothing. It was just a building, a shell. The real work, the work that mattered, had been happening elsewhere. He let himself into the silent house. The air was cool and still, smelling faintly of bamboo and old wood. It was a house designed to impress, not to comfort. He walked past the living area with its museum-quality ceramics and the dining room with its table for 20, all spaces of performance. He climbed the floating stone staircase to the second floor, his footsteps echoing in the unnatural quiet. Sujin's room was at the end of the hall. He had always thought of it as the girls' room. He pushed open the door. It was exactly as he expected. Minimalist, clean, impersonal. A bed, neatly made. A small, elegant desk with a laptop on it. A bookshelf with a few dozen novels. It looked like a guest room in a luxury hotel. He felt a flash of frustration. What real desk? This was it. He walked over to the desk. It was dust-free. The laptop was closed. He touched it, but it was password protected, of course. He scanned the bookshelf. The titles meant nothing to him. He was about to turn away, to dismiss her words as another riddle, when his eyes caught something. A single book on the nightstand. It was an old leather-bound copy of The Art of War. It was not a book he would have associated with her. He picked it up. It felt heavy, substantial. A small, folded piece of paper was tucked inside, marking a page. He unfolded it. It wasn't a note. It was a library checkout slip from the Jungdok Public Library. The slip was dated that morning, and it had a call number written on it in neat, precise handwriting. It was not a clue. It was the first step on a trail. Her words came back to him. If you want to understand, go to my room. Look at my desk. The real one. He looked around the room again, but this time, he was looking for something that did not belong. Something that broke the sterile perfection. His gaze fell upon a large framed print on the wall opposite the bed. It was an abstract photograph of layered rock formations. He had approved it himself years ago. It was tasteful, neutral. But as he looked closer, he saw that the bottom right corner of the frame was not perfectly flush with the wall. It was off by maybe 2 millimeters, a tiny, almost imperceptible imperfection in a room that was otherwise flawless. He walked over and pressed on the corner. There was a soft click, and the entire print swung outward on silent hinges, revealing a cavity in the wall. And inside that cavity was the real desk. It was not a desk at all. It was a command center. 3 monitors were mounted on the wall, dark for now. A custom-built computer tower sat on a shelf. But it was the wall above it that held his attention. It was covered in a vast, intricate mind map drawn on a massive whiteboard. His companies, his allies, his enemies, all connected by lines of influence, finance, and data. It was his entire world, diagrammed with a terrifying clarity he himself had never possessed. At the very center was his name, and branching off from it was another name, connected by a thick red line, Mr. Cho. And from Cho's name, a spiderweb of secret accounts, shell corporations, and hidden communications radiated outward, intersecting with every single one of Kang's legitimate enterprises. It was a map of a silent coup, a betrayal that had been years in the making. Beneath the whiteboard, on a small, neat shelf, was a row of black binders, 12 of them, one for each year she had lived in his house. He pulled one at random, year 7. He opened it. It was filled with printouts of financial statements, shipping manifests, and encrypted email chains between Cho and offshore banks. Each document was annotated by hand, in that same, neat, precise script. A note on one page read, "Discrepancy in fuel cost allocation, Busan fleet, 0.8%, potential siphon, cross-ref with Cayman account 74B. He grabbed another binder, year 11. It detailed the Mipo port deal. Sujin's analysis was there, pages of it. Complex algorithms, geopolitical risk assessments, raw data he didn't even know existed. At the end of her summary was a single stark sentence. The official proposal submitted to Chairman Kang by Mr. Cho overstates revenue projections by 32% and understates long-term capital expenditure requirements by 18%. It is not an investment, it is a trap, designed to fail. He sank to the floor, the binder open in his lap. The air in the hidden alcove was cool, but sweat beaded on his forehead. He had been so blind, so utterly, profoundly blind. He had seen Cho as the epitome of loyalty, a man of perfect execution and no ambition, a reflection of his own competence. But Cho had been playing a different game, a long game, and the only person who had noticed, the only person who had paid enough attention to see the tiny, fractional discrepancies, the 0.8% siphons that grew into a torrent, was the girl he had treated as a piece of furniture. She had not been analyzing his business to help him succeed. She had been auditing it to protect him from the man he trusted most. The foundation she built, the loyalty she earned from dock workers and politicians, it wasn't for her own power. It was a defense network, a firewall. One she had just activated because the threat was no longer theoretical. He finally understood her words at the station. You are the target. Cho was making his move. The MIPO deal was the kill shot, a catastrophic failure that would have left Kang financially ruined and politically exposed, allowing Cho to step in and rescue the company, seizing control from the wreckage. Soo-jin hadn't destroyed the deal to punish Kang. She had destroyed it to save him. The full weight of his failure crashed down on him. It wasn't just that he had failed to see Cho's betrayal. He had failed to see her. For 12 years, she had lived a secret life of fierce, silent loyalty, working from this hidden room to defend an empire whose master didn't even know her age. He had given her a room, and she had built a fortress. He had given her shelter, and she had given him protection. He had seen a dependent. The world had seen a genius. And Mr. Cho, Kang now realized with a fresh wave of ice in his veins, had likely seen a threat. He looked at the empty wheelchair that stood folded in a corner of the outer room. It was a symbol of everything he had gotten wrong. He had defined her by her limitations, by the one thing she could not do, and had remained oblivious to the 1,000 things she could. You see what you look for. He had looked for weakness, for someone to pity and provide for, and so that was all he had seen. He stood up, his body stiff. The shock was receding, replaced by the cold, familiar hum of purpose. He was a man waking from a long slumber. The game was not over. The board had been revealed, the players identified. His most trusted ally was his greatest enemy. His most overlooked dependent was his strongest asset. He picked up the library slip, the first step on the trail she had left for him. It was not just a trail to find her. He understood that now. It was a trail to his own redemption. It was a curriculum, and class was in session. The next morning, the city felt different. The veneer of control had been stripped away. Kang saw not a kingdom he commanded, but a complex ecosystem he had failed to understand. He did not call his office. He did not call Mr. Cho. To do so would be to alert the enemy that he was aware. For now, his ignorance was his only shield. He dressed in simple, dark clothes, forgoing his usual tailored suit. He took a taxi to the Jongdok Public Library, a handsome, aging building nestled in a quiet neighborhood. He had not been in a public library in 30 years. The quiet felt alien, a stark contrast to the urgent hum of his world. He found the section indicated by the call number on the slip. It was a dusty corner of the history archives. The book was a thick, academic text, a maritime history of the Joseon dynasty. Tucked inside was another folded piece of paper. This one contained a short, handwritten note and a small, sealed envelope. The note read, "The librarian at the main desk is Mrs. An. She has been here for 40 years. She knows more about this city than anyone. Ask her about the Gyeongbok Palace restoration project of 1995. Show her the envelope. Listen to what she says." He approached the main desk. Mrs. An was a small, elderly woman with sharp, intelligent eyes behind thick glasses. She looked up as he approached, her expression neutral. "I was told to ask you about the Gyeongbok Palace restoration project," Kang said, his voice quiet. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That was a long time ago, a complicated affair. Why do you ask?" He slid the sealed envelope across the counter. It was made of heavy, cream-colored paper with no markings. She picked it up, her fingers surprisingly nimble. She did not open it. She held it to the light, then felt its weight. She looked from the envelope to Kang's face, a long, appraising look. "She trusts you then," Mrs. An said. "It was not a question. Enough to send you here. I wonder if you have earned it." She finally tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It was an old, black-and-white picture of a group of men in work clothes standing in front of a partially dismantled palace gate. "My father is in this photograph," Mrs. An said, her voice softening. "He was a master carpenter. The government contract for that restoration was a sham. The lead contractor was using cheap materials, pocketing the difference. It was dangerous. My father tried to blow the whistle. He was fired, blacklisted. He never worked as a master carpenter again." Kang remained silent, listening. 2 years ago," Mrs. An continued, her gaze distant, "a young woman in a wheelchair started coming to this library. Every day. She sat in that corner over there." She gestured with her chin. "She read everything we have on municipal contracts, procurement law, historical preservation statutes, for months. Then one day, she asked me about the 1995 restoration. I told her the story, my father's story." Mrs. An paused, looking down at the photograph. 6 months later, an anonymous dossier was sent to the press and the Board of Audit and Inspection. It contained irrefutable proof of the fraud from 1995. The original contracts, which had been lost for decades, bank records from the contractor, who was now a wealthy property developer. It was all there. Last year, the government issued a formal apology to the families of the craftsmen. They established a fund in their name. My father's honor was restored a year after he died. She looked up at Kang, her eyes boring into him. The young woman, Soo-jin, she never said a word about it, but I knew it was her. The precision of the research, the quiet anger behind it. She doesn't just read books, Chairman Kang. She reads the world. She finds the injustices hidden in the margins, the stories people try to erase. She told me she was helping a powerful man who did not have time to look at the details. She believed his name could be used for good, even if he didn't direct it himself. Kang felt a profound sense of shame. He remembered the news story about the Gyeongbok scandal. He had read the headline, dismissed it as old news, another piece of civic corruption. He had no idea he was connected to it. He had no idea Soo-jin had wielded his name, his implied power, like a weapon for justice. "She is a remarkable person," Kang said, the words inadequate. "She is a librarian at heart," Mrs. An corrected him. "She believes in the truth, and she believes it should be accessible to those who need it. She left something for you." Mrs. An reached under her desk and retrieved another sealed envelope, slightly larger than the first. "She said you would know where to go next. She said to tell you that some debts are not financial." She also said to tell you something else." The librarian leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. She said, "Tell him Mr. Cho called me 3 days ago. He asked if I could find any record of Chairman Kang's father making inquiries about offshore accounts in the 1980s. She told Cho she found nothing. That was a lie. She found the records. They are not in this envelope." Kang's blood ran cold. Cho was not just planning a corporate takeover. He was digging for personal leverage, for old family secrets he could use to destroy Kang completely. And Soo-jin was one step ahead of him. She was not just showing Kang the betrayal. She was showing him the shape of her protection. He took the envelope. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling heavy, earned. "Do not thank me," Mrs. An said, her gaze unwavering. "Thank her, by proving her trust was not misplaced." He left the library and stood on the sun-drenched street, the city's noise returning. He opened the second envelope. Inside was a single, high-resolution photograph. It was a picture of a small, nondescript stall in the Gwangjang market, piled high with colorful bolts of silk. The stall's sign read, "Han's Silks." In the corner of the photograph, a date and time were discreetly watermarked. The next day, 3 p.m., the second stop on the trail. This was her methodology. She did not give him the answers. She led him to people, to custodians of her story, each one revealing a different facet of the woman he had never seen. The first custodian, the librarian, had shown him Soo-jin's intellect and her hidden sense of justice. He wondered what the second would reveal. He spent the rest of the day in a state of suspended animation. He checked into a small, anonymous hotel, paying in cash. He bought a burner phone. He was off the grid. To his organization, to Mr. Cho, he had simply vanished after the incident at the station. Let them wonder. Let Cho think he was spiraling, confused, weak. The longer Cho underestimated him, the better. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Mrs. An's words. Cho was asking about his father. His father had been a gray market trader, a man who built a small fortune in the turbulent years after the war, a fortune Kang had inherited and legitimized. There were secrets there, of course. There were always secrets. But for Cho to be digging there meant he was preparing for a final, personal battle, not just a corporate one. The next day at 3, Kang walked through the chaotic, vibrant Gwangjang market. The air was thick with the smell of sizzling mung bean pancakes and boiling silk. He found the stall from the photograph. It was run by an old man with a serene face and hands stained with dye. "I am looking for Mr. Han," Kang said. The old man nodded slowly. "You are expected," he said. He gestured for Kang to follow him to the back of the stall through a curtain of hanging fabrics. They entered a small, quiet room where tea was steeping on a low table. "I am Han," the old man said, pouring the tea. "Soo-jin asked me to speak with you. She said you were finally ready to listen." "Listen to what?" Kang asked. "About the other side of your business," Han said. "The one you pay for, but do not see." Mr. Han was the unofficial treasurer for a network of street vendors, small merchants, and day laborers, a community that existed outside the formal economy. For years, your foundation has been a source of help for us. Not the official foundation that holds galas, another one. A fund that operates in cash. A fund that pays for a vendor's hospital bill when his card is overturned. A fund that helps a family pay for a funeral. No paperwork, no questions, just help. Kang was stunned. "I never authorized such a fund." "She did," Han said simply, "using your name. She told us Chairman Kang believes in taking care of his own, even the ones he does not know. She would come here, to the market, not as the ward of a rich man, but as a friend. She would sit with the vendors, listen to their stories, learn their needs. She knew who was sick, whose child was struggling in school, who was being shaken down by the local gangs. He took a sip of tea. Your Mr. Cho tried to shut it down once, 3 years ago. He called it an unaudited liability, a security risk. He sent some of his men to discourage the fund. They were very persuasive. Han's eyes darkened. That night, the union boss from the Busan docks paid them a visit. The dock workers are from neighborhoods like this. They have family here. The union boss explained that if Mr. Cho's men ever showed their faces in this market again, not a single one of your containers would be unloaded. Ever. Cho's men never came back. Kang finally understood the connection between the dock workers and the market. It wasn't just about charity. It was a web of mutual defense woven by Sujin. She had built an army for him that he didn't know he had. An army loyal not to his money, but to her compassion. She built a kingdom of whispers, Han said, a hint of awe in his voice. A network of people who owe her their loyalty. A loyalty that cannot be bought. She told me to tell you that this network is now yours to command if you prove worthy of it. She also said to give you this. He handed Kang a third sealed envelope. There is one more person you need to see. A man named Park Min-jun. He is a retired regulator from the Financial Supervisory Service. He lives in Busan. Sujin said he holds the final piece, the one that explains what Mr. Cho is truly after. Kang left the market, the third envelope heavy in his pocket. The librarian had shown him Sujin's mind. The silk merchant had shown him her heart. He was beginning to see the whole person, not just the fragments. The picture was one of staggering competence, of a strategic and empathetic genius who operated in the shadows, not out of fear, but by choice. He took the first KTX train to Busan. During the 3-hour journey, he thought about the empire he had built. He had constructed it with concrete and steel, with contracts and capital. Sujin had built hers with information and relationships. His was brittle, hollow, already crumbling. Hers was resilient, organic, and powerful. He found Park Min-jun in a small, tidy apartment overlooking the gray waters of Busan Harbor. Park was a man in his late 60s, with the sharp, weary eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime swimming with sharks. "Chairman Kang," Park said, greeting him at the door. "I've been expecting you. Sujin called me yesterday. She said you were finally asking the right questions." He led Kang to a study filled with books on international finance and law. "I was the head of the Foreign Capital Oversight Division," Park explained. "For over a year, I have been in correspondence with an anonymous researcher who has been asking exceptionally detailed questions about sovereign wealth fund structures and cross-border asset seizure protocols. The questions were so sophisticated, so specific. I thought I was talking to a senior regulator from the SEC or the Monetary Authority of Singapore." "It was Sujin," Kang stated. "It was Sujin," Park confirmed. She was tracing a complex web of shell corporations from Panama to the British Virgin Islands, all leading back to a single holding company in Switzerland, a company that has been quietly acquiring shares in your primary competitors, and more recently, a company that has been buying up your own corporate debt on the secondary market. Park turned to his computer and pulled up a complex flowchart. This is the structure she unmapped. It's a masterpiece of financial obfuscation. But she found the source. The money funding this entire operation originates from a single account, an account that belongs to Mr. Cho. Kang stared at the screen. This was far beyond simple embezzlement. This was a plan not just to take over Kang's company, but to consolidate an entire sector of the Korean economy under Cho's control. The MIPO deal was the trigger. It was designed to create a liquidity crisis, forcing Kang to default on his bonds, at which point Cho, as the secret owner of that debt, would seize the company's assets, including its port facilities. He wouldn't just be the new chairman. He would be a monopolist. She has been building the case against him for 2 years, Park said, meticulously, legally. She has everything. Wire transfers, encrypted communications, sworn affidavits from disgruntled junior partners Cho betrayed along the way. She has built a cage of perfect evidence. Where is it? Kang asked, his voice hoarse. This evidence. She entrusted it to me, Park said. He opened a safe in his wall and removed a slim, heavy hard drive. This is a complete mirror of her archive. The original is with her. She told me to give this to you under one condition, that you use it not for revenge, but for justice. That you dismantle Cho's network, but you protect the innocent people caught in his web. The employees, the small investors. She was very clear on that point. Kang took the hard drive. It felt like the weight of his entire future. She planned for this. For all of this. She plans for everything, Park said. She told me she ran 2 scenarios. In the first, you would see the threat on your own. In the second, you would not. Her departure was the activation of the second scenario. A scenario designed to educate you, to strip away your blindness, and to prepare you for the fight to come. She also left you this. Park handed him a final, simple white envelope. Kang's name was written on the front in her familiar, precise script. He opened it. Inside was not a note, but an address. A simple address for an apartment in a quiet residential neighborhood of Busan, not far from the sea. There was no other instruction. None was needed. The trail was over. He had reached the end. He had arrived in Busan a student. He would go to that address a partner. Or he would not be received at all. The choice he knew was his. He had the evidence. He had the network of loyalty she had built. He had the truth. The only question that remained was what he would do with it, and who he would be when he finally stood before her again. The address led to a modern, unassuming apartment building overlooking Haeundae Beach. The salt-laced wind whipped around him as he stood before the entrance, the hard drive a solid weight in his jacket pocket. He felt a profound hesitation. The men he had met on his journey, the librarian, the merchant, the regulator, were all gatekeepers to a world he never knew existed. They had judged him, measured him against the standards Soo-jin had set. Now he was at the final gate, and the custodian was Soo-jin herself. He took the elevator to the 7th floor. The hallway was quiet, the air still. He found the apartment number and knocked. The sound was too loud in the silence. For a long moment, nothing happened. He wondered if she would refuse to see him, if this was the final test. Then he heard the soft whir of her chair, and the lock clicked open. The door swung inward. Soo-jin was there, her chair positioned just inside the doorway. She was not in the simple clothes from the station. She wore a clean white blouse and dark slacks. Her hair was tied back. She looked rested, calm, and completely in control. The apartment behind her was sparse but bright, filled with sunlight and the sound of the distant waves. There were books everywhere, piled on shelves, on the floor, on the simple wooden table. This was her space, a space she had chosen, a world she had made for herself. "Chairman," she said. Her tone was neutral, giving nothing away. "Soo-jin," he replied. He stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder. "May I come in?" She considered him for a moment, her dark eyes searching his face. He did not try to project authority or confidence. He let her see the exhaustion, the shock, the dawning, painful clarity. He was not the man who had walked into Seoul Station 2 days ago. That man was a ghost. "Yes," she said finally, and wheeled her chair back to let him pass. He stepped inside and she closed the door behind him. The sound of the lock clicking shut felt significant, sealing them in this new reality. He stood awkwardly in the small entryway. "I went to the library," he began, "and the market. I met Mr. Park." "I know," she said. "They called. They believe you are capable of understanding." "Understanding is a low bar," he said, the admission costing him. "I should have seen it. I should have seen you." He looked around the apartment. It was the antithesis of his own home. It was a space for living and thinking, not for performing. On a large monitor on her desk, he saw the same intricate mind map of his organization that he had seen behind the print in her room. But this one was active, with data streams updating in real time. "For 12 years, he said, his voice quiet. "I saw you as a responsibility, a debt I owed your father. I gave you what I thought you needed: money, a roof, comfort. I never once thought to give you my attention." "Attention is a currency," she said, repeating the phrase that had haunted him. "You spent yours elsewhere." There was no accusation in her voice. It was a simple statement of economic fact. "Cho," he said, getting to the point, "I saw the archive, the plan. He was going to gut the company, ruin me." "He is going to try," she corrected him. "The Meepo deal collapsing has accelerated his timeline. He believes you are in disarray, emotionally compromised. He will interpret your disappearance as weakness. He will move to consolidate his power within the organization. He will call for a vote of the elders." "The elders trust me," Kang said, a flicker of his old certainty returning. "The elders trust stability," she countered. "Cho will offer them what appears to be a steady hand. He will paint you as a leader who was blind to a threat in his own house and who crumbled under pressure. He will use your concern for me as a weapon against you. He will say you have grown soft, distracted." She was right. He could already hear Cho's calm, persuasive voice making the case in the boardroom. "What do we do?" he asked. And in that question, everything changed. For the first time, he was not giving a command. He was asking for guidance. He was admitting he did not have the answer. She wheeled her chair over to the window, looking out at the sea. "For 2 years I have prepared for this. I built 2 things. The first was the cage for Mr. Cho, the legal and financial evidence that Mr. Park gave you. The second was a shield for the organization, the network of loyalty, the dock workers, the merchants, the honest politicians. They are the company's true assets. They are our firewall." She turned back to him. "Cho's power is centralized. It relies on secrecy and control. Our power is distributed. It relies on transparency and trust. We cannot fight him on his terms. We have to change the battlefield." "How?" "We don't try to crush him in the shadows. We expose him to the light," she said. "Mr. Park, the regulator, is retired, but he is still the most respected voice on financial crime in this country. He is prepared to take the evidence on that hard drive to the Financial Supervisory Service and the prosecutor's office, not as an anonymous tip, but as a formal complaint, with his name and reputation behind it. He will do it the moment you give the word." "That will trigger a massive investigation," Kang said, thinking through the implications. "The company's stock will be suspended. Our assets will be frozen. It will be chaos." "Yes," she agreed. "It will be chaos for everyone, including for Mr. Cho. He cannot operate in that environment. His offshore accounts will be scrutinized. His political allies will desert him. He thrives in the dark. We will turn on all the lights." It was a bold, terrifying strategy, a scorched earth approach. But he saw the brutal logic of it. Cho was a cancer. You couldn't negotiate with it. You had to burn it out. even if it meant damaging the healthy tissue around it. And the elders? He asked. The vote of confidence? That is your battle, she said, but you will not fight it alone. While the official investigation begins, you will contact the 5 elders, not as a chairman demanding loyalty, but as a leader, admitting his failure and presenting a plan for a new foundation. You will tell them the truth, all of it, about Cho, about your blindness, about me. He flinched at the last part. Admitting his failure to the world was one thing. Admitting that a girl he had ignored for a decade was the true architect of his company's security was another. It would shatter his image, his myth. She seemed to read his thoughts. Your image is a liability, she said. It is what blinded you. You must sacrifice it to save the company. You must prove that you value the truth more than your pride. You will offer them a new way forward, a partnership, not just with you, but with the competence you now recognize. They worked through the night. It was a strange, intense collaboration. Soo-jin at her command center, her fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up data, drafting communications. Kang on his new burner phone, pacing the small apartment, his mind for the first time fully engaged with the true, granular reality of his organization. He was not managing, he was learning. He was not directing, he was communicating. She would present a piece of strategy, a sequence of actions. He would analyze it from his decades of experience, pointing out a potential obstacle, a personality flaw in one of the elders that they could use. She would listen, absorb his input, and adjust the plan. There was no ego, no hierarchy. There was only the problem, and the two of them moving against it. He had never felt so energized, so focused. He was seeing his own world through her eyes, and it was a world of infinite detail and clarity. At 4 a.m., she turned to him. It's time. Mr. Park is waiting for your call. Once you make it, there is no going back. The clock will start. He looked at her, at the quiet confidence in her face. He had come here seeking a weapon to defeat his enemy. He had found a partner to build something new. Make the call, he said. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic, exactly as Soo-jin had predicted. By 9 a.m., when the markets opened, the news had broken. The Financial Supervisory Service had launched a full-scale investigation into Kang's entire corporate structure, citing a formal complaint from the legendary Park Min-jun. Trading of Kang's stock was halted. His assets were provisionally frozen pending the investigation. The media descended like vultures, with headlines screaming of corporate rot and a titan's fall. From his hotel room in Busan, Kang watched the chaos unfold on the news. His face was on every channel. His legacy was being torched. A week ago, this would have destroyed him. Now, he felt a strange sense of detachment. The man they were talking about, the infallible Chairman Kang, was an illusion. The reality was here, in this room, with a burner phone and a list of 5 names. Just as Soo-jin had anticipated, Mr. Cho made his move. He released a statement to the press. It was a masterpiece of calculated concern. He expressed his profound shock and sadness at the allegations, pledging his full cooperation with the authorities. He subtly positioned himself as the stable successor, the man who could guide the company through this crisis. Then he made the internal move. He formally requested an emergency meeting of the Board of Elders to vote on removing Chairman Kang from his position, citing gross negligence and an inability to lead. The meeting was set for 4 p.m. the following day in Seoul. Cho had given him 36 hours. He's using the institutional bylaws against you, Soo-jin said, over the encrypted line. She was still in her apartment, her command center. He knows you are operationally paralyzed by the asset freeze. He thinks you cannot reach the elders, that you have no power to offer them. He's wrong, Kang said. He had already begun the calls. The first was to Elder Kim, the oldest and most respected of the 5. a man of immense traditional authority. Kim, Kang began, foregoing the usual pleasantries, you have seen the news. You have received Cho's request for a vote. I have. The old man's voice was heavy with disappointment. This is a disaster, Kang. You let a snake into your own house. I did, Kang admitted, the words tasting like acid. I was blind. I confused loyalty with silence. That is my failure, and I will own it. But this is not the time to hand the company to the snake. Cho is not trying to save the company. He is trying to own its corpse. He then spent 20 minutes laying out the truth. He told him about Cho's secret debt acquisition, the plan to trigger a default, the consolidation scheme. He explained Soo-jin's role, not as a victim, but as the strategist who had uncovered the plot. He held nothing back. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. You are asking us to trust you, after you admit you were a fool? Elder Kim asked. No, Kang said. I am asking you to trust the evidence that will be presented by the FSS. And I am asking you to make a choice. You can side with a traitor who offers you the illusion of stability. Or you can side with me and help me build something new, something stronger, something honest. He paused. I can't offer you a golden parachute if you side with me. My assets are frozen. All I can offer is my word that when this is over, we will rebuild this company on a foundation of truth, and your place in it will be honored. He made 4 more calls, each one the same. He did not threaten or cajole. He confessed his failure, presented the facts, and made a single honest promise. He was reversing a lifetime of habits. He was not managing them. He was communicating with them. He was not buying their loyalty. He was earning their trust. As the day wore on, the pressure mounted. Cho was working the phones too, offering deals, promising positions, painting Kang as a man who had lost his mind. 2 of the elders, the younger, more pragmatic ones, began to waver. They were businessmen, and Cho was offering a quick, profitable exit from the chaos. They are looking for security, Soo-jin said, her voice calm in his ear. Cho is offering them a lifeboat. You are offering them a chance to help you rebuild the ship in the middle of a hurricane. We need to give them something more, Kang said, the old instincts kicking in. A guarantee. Cho's guarantees are built on lies that will collapse, she countered. Your guarantee has to be built on a truth he cannot touch. We need to go back to the network, the real one. Her plan was simple and brilliant. Kang began making another round of calls, but not to the elders. He called the union boss in Busan. He called Mr. Han, the silk merchant in Gwangjang Market. He told them what was happening, that the elders were considering handing the company to Cho. The response was immediate. The union boss called Elder Park, whose family had deep roots in Busan's shipping industry, and reminded him that the dock workers' loyalty was not to a chairman, but to the people who respected them. He made it clear that if Cho took over, the ports would be a war zone. Mr. Han, through his vast network of merchants, sent a message to Elder Lee, whose wife came from a family of market vendors. The message was simple. Chairman Kang's name had meant justice for them because of Soo-jin. Cho's name meant intimidation. The community was watching. It was a pincer movement. Soo-jin was directing the institutional attack through the legal system, while Kang was mobilizing the human network she had built. Cho was fighting a corporate battle on paper. They were fighting a moral battle on the streets and in the hearts of the people his empire actually touched. By the morning of the vote, the tide had begun to turn. The 2 wavering elders had gone silent, refusing Cho's calls. They were caught between Cho's promises of profit and the undeniable groundswell of authentic support for Kang. But Cho had one last move. It was a lateral surprise, something even Soo-jin hadn't fully anticipated. An hour before the vote, a story was leaked to a notorious online tabloid. The headline was vicious. Fallen Chairman Kang abandons crippled ward in train station, sparks mental breakdown. The story painted a picture of Kang as a cruel, unstable man, and of Soo-jin as a helpless victim he had cast aside. It included photos of him at the station, looking angry and confused. It was a character assassination, designed to be the final nail in his coffin, to make him look not just negligent, but monstrous. "He's not trying to win the vote anymore," Soo-jin said, her voice tight with anger for the first time. "He's trying to burn you to the ground. He's using me, my disability, as his final weapon." Kang felt a surge of protective fury he had never experienced before. Cho had crossed a line. He had taken the one person Kang now sought to honor and turned her into a prop in his dirty game. "It won't work," Kang said, his voice a low growl. "He thinks he's exposing a weakness. He's about to find out he just exposed his own." He made one final call, not to an elder, not to a union boss. He called the station master at Seoul Station, the man whose 9 words had started his entire education. The emergency board meeting was held in the company's main conference room, a space of dark wood and cold glass overlooking the city. Cho sat at the head of the table, looking calm and presidential. The 5 elders were arranged around him, their faces grim. Kang was not there physically. He was patched in via a secure video link to a large screen on the wall. His face was unshaven, his background the anonymous wall of his hotel room. He looked like a man on the run. Cho began the proceedings. "We are here today for a painful but necessary reason," he started, his voice resonating with false sincerity. "Chairman Kang, a man we all respected, has brought this company to the brink of ruin. His negligence allowed a criminal conspiracy to fester, and his recent erratic behavior, as I'm sure you've all seen in the news, proves he is no longer fit to lead." He spoke for 10 minutes, laying out his case with cold, clinical precision. He was winning. Kang could feel it. The elders were nodding. The tabloid story had done its damage. When Cho finished, all eyes turned to the screen, to Kang. "Chairman Kang," Elder Kim said, his voice heavy, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" "Yes," Kang said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "Mr. Cho is right about one thing. I was negligent. I was blind. I failed to see the truth in my own house. I have no defense for that. It is the great failure of my life." He paused, letting the admission hang in the air. "But he is wrong about everything else." "He calls my behavior erratic," Kang continued. "I call it an education. He talks about the girl I supposedly abandoned. He uses her disability as a slur. He sees her, as I once did, as a symbol of weakness. That is because Mr. Cho is a fool. He has mistaken the most valuable asset this company has ever had for a liability." He looked directly into the camera. "That young woman, Soo-jin, is not a victim. She is a genius. For years, while I was busy with the vanity of my own power, she was the one protecting this company. She built the case against Cho. She built the networks of loyalty that he could never touch. She engineered the very investigation that he is now trying to use to his advantage. The chaos he decries is a controlled burn designed to save us from the cancer of his greed." He leaned closer to the camera. "You have read the tabloid story. Now I want you to hear from a witness, a man with no stake in this game other than the truth." Suddenly, the video feed switched. Kang's face was replaced by the tired, honest face of the station master from Seoul Station. He was in his small office, the sounds of the concourse faint in the background. "My name is Choi Min-ho," the station master said, his voice steady. "I was on duty the night they say Chairman Kong abandoned the young woman." "That is not what happened. Chairman Kong arrived and spoke to her with respect. He did not force her to leave. He listened to her. But that's not the important part. The important part is what happened before he arrived. For 4 hours, she sat there. She was not scared. She was working. She was on her phone, making calls, sending messages. She was calm. She was in command. She wasn't abandoned. She was at the center of her own operation. The story in the news is a lie. I was there. The video feed switched back to Kong. The room was silent. The station master's simple, unvarnished testimony had cut through all of Cho's sophisticated lies. It had the undeniable ring of truth. "You have a choice," Kang said to the elders. "You can vote for the man who builds his power on lies and deception. Or you can vote for me, the man who is finally, painfully, learning to see the truth. And you can vote for the brilliant young woman who has been our guardian all along. When this is over, she will not be a ward. She will be a partner, at the heart of this company. That is the future I am offering you." Cho was on his feet, his composure finally cracking. "This is absurd, a farce. Are you going to let this company be run by a cripple and a broken man?" The insult hung in the air, ugly and raw. It was his final, fatal mistake. In that moment, he revealed the contempt at his core. Elder Kim stood up slowly. "Mr. Cho," he said, his voice like ice. "My wife's younger sister uses a wheelchair. She is the sharpest lawyer in Seoul. You are a disgrace." He turned to the other elders. "I vote to support Chairman Kang. I vote for the future he described." One by one, the other 4 elders followed suit. "I vote for Kang. For Kang. For Kang. For Kang." It was unanimous. Cho stared at them, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. His carefully constructed world had evaporated in an instant. He had been outmaneuvered, his own tactics turned against him. He turned and stormed out of the room without another word. On the screen, Kang closed his eyes for a moment. He had not won. He had been saved. Saved by a librarian, a merchant, a regulator, a station master, and a girl in a wheelchair who had taught him the true meaning of power. The collapse was swift. With the elders' backing, Kang was able to coordinate with the FSS investigators. The evidence on Sujin's hard drive was so complete, so irrefutable, that Cho's entire network was dismantled within 48 hours. His secret accounts were frozen, his shell corporations seized. His political allies, implicated in the data, publicly disavowed him. Cho did not get far. He was found 2 days later, not in an exotic country with no extradition treaty, but in a cheap motel in Incheon, staring at the sea. The loyal operator Kang kept for such occasions Mr. Park, a different Park, a man of quiet, physical competence, located him. Park called Kang. "He is here. He has nothing. No money, no allies. What are your orders, Chairman?" The old Kang would have given a simple, final order. An eye for an eye, a life for a betrayal. But he was not the old Kang. "Ensure he is delivered to the prosecutor's office," Kang said, "alive and unharmed. Let the law be his punishment. We are building something new. We don't start with blood." The institutional restoration was slow and arduous. Kang worked tirelessly, not from his high-rise office, but from a temporary headquarters in Busan, near Sujin's apartment. He was a constant presence in her sunlit living room, which had become the de facto war room. They unraveled Cho's deals, protected the employees whose jobs were at risk, and communicated with a radical transparency to the regulators and the market. The partners who had withdrawn, like Lee Jin-woo of Mirai Capital, returned. But they returned with a new understanding. They came to Busan to meet not just with Kang, but with Soo-jin. They listened as she walked them through her analysis, her calm command of the data leaving them in awe. They were no longer investing in Chairman Kang's reputation. They were investing in Soo-jin's intellect and Kang's newfound humility. 3 months later, the company was stabilized. The stock was trading again, bruised but climbing. The name had been cleared. Kang decided it was time for the final act of correction. He called a general meeting of the entire organization, from the senior executives to the dock workers who were flown in from Busan. The meeting was held in the same grand auditorium where he had, for years, delivered triumphant speeches about growth and profit. He walked onto the stage alone. There was no podium, no script. The room was silent. "For most of my career," he began, his voice clear and steady, "I have stood on this stage and talked about strength. I confused strength with dominance. I confused power with control. I confused success with being right. I was wrong." He looked out at the faces in the crowd. "Today, I want to talk about true strength. True strength is admitting when you are blind. True strength is listening. True strength is valuing the people you have overlooked." He paused. "For 12 years, the most important person in this organization has been invisible to me, and to most of you. We are standing today because of her. We survived a betrayal that should have destroyed us because she paid attention when I did not. She saw the truth when I saw only what I expected to see. Her name is Soo-jin." He turned to the side of the stage. Soo-jin wheeled herself out from the wings. A quiet gasp went through the auditorium. She moved to the center of the stage, stopping beside him. She looked out at the crowd, her expression calm and composed. "This is not my ward," Kang said, his voice ringing with a fierce pride. "This is not a dependent. This is the strategic heart of this company. She is the person who saved us. From this day forward, she is my partner and the chief strategy officer of this entire enterprise. Any major decision this company makes will cross her desk. Her voice will be my voice. Her judgment will be our guide." He then looked directly at Soo-jin. "I failed you," he said, his voice for her alone, though the whole room could hear. "I promise I will spend the rest of my career earning the trust you gave me when I did not deserve it." A slow, hesitant applause started at the back of the room, from the contingent of dock workers. It grew, spreading through the executives, the managers, the administrative staff, until the entire auditorium was on its feet, a thunderous, sustained ovation. It was not for him, he knew. It was for her. It was for the idea that quiet competence could finally be seen, that true value could be recognized. The final scene of the old story was over. The next day, the first scene of the new one began. It did not begin in a boardroom or an office. It began in Soo-jin's apartment in Busan. She had refused to move back to the estate in Seoul. "That house is a museum of a man who no longer exists," she had said. "We are not rebuilding what was. We are building something new." He had agreed. He now kept a small apartment in the same building. He was a guest in her world, on her terms. He knocked on her door, and she let him in. The table was covered not with evidence of betrayal, but with blueprints for a new deep-water port, a project that was environmentally sustainable and co-owned by the workers' union. It was the anti-MIPO deal. "The initial funding is secured," he said, sitting down opposite her. "The government is supportive. The groundbreaking could be in 6 months." She looked over the plans, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The title modeling is incomplete, she said, pointing to a section, and the profit-sharing structure for the union members is still too weighted toward seniority. It needs to be flatter, more equitable. He looked at her notes, at her precise, irrefutable logic. He felt no defensiveness, only respect. "You're right," he said. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the distant cry of gulls and the soft scratch of her pen on the paper. The power between them had found its new equilibrium. It was not the imbalance of a guardian and a ward, nor the frantic energy of partners in a crisis. It was something quiet, steady, and productive. An earned collaboration. "Sujin," he said, the question one he had wanted to ask for weeks. "Will you ever forgive me?" She stopped writing, but did not look up immediately. She seemed to consider the word itself. "Forgiveness is for things that are over," she said finally, her gaze lifting to meet his. "This isn't over. This is a process. My trust is not a gift I can give you. It is a structure we are building together, every day. It is conditional. It is based on your actions, on your attention." She then looked back down at the blueprints, at the work that lay ahead of them. "You see what you look for, Chairman," she said, the old refrain now transformed. It was no longer an indictment of his blindness, but a statement of their shared mission. "Let's make sure we are looking for the right things." He nodded. He picked up his own pen and turned his attention to the plans. The work had begun. It was quiet. It was unsentimental. It was a beginning.